Welcome to the Good Divorce Show, where we can help you learn how to navigate the journey of divorce with less conflict, less debt, and equip you not to just get divorced, but also learn how to be divorced. Your host, certified divorce coach Karen McNenny, shares her wealth of knowledge, gets advice from other relationship experts, and interviews couples who learn how to have a good divorce, so you can too. Now here's your host, Karen.
Well, hello there. Thanks for popping into the Good Divorce Show today. I am Karen McNenny, your good divorce coach. And have you ever wondered, is there any attorney in the world who would want to help a couple navigate a good divorce? Someone who's had enough of litigation, someone who wants to find the softer side of divorce to support families. Well, today you're in for a treat because I found one. I found Matthew Long in San Luis Obispo, California, who is an attorney who had litigated for many, many years and has turned the page to primarily focusing on mediation. 35 years supporting families as an attorney, and most of those 33 in family law. So very excited to have Matthew Long with us today. Welcome to the show, Matthew.
Thanks for having me on.
In full disclosure, listeners, Matthew and I work together on a couple. And when I'm here in Montana, but I work with families across the country, which means I always have to find a lawyer in the state of the family, because that's just part of the law. You got to have a lawyer do all your paperwork who knows the laws of that state. And the law around divorce is not the same across state lines. Right. And so I reached out to you, Matthew, and I thought this might be an interesting place to start, where I'm kind of trying to pitch a new idea. And it actually was the client who was looking for those that were collaboratively trained, who offered mediation. We were, trying to make sure we didn't have any overlapping, what do you call it? If you know somebody's uncle, you can't represent them.
Conflicts.
Conflict of interest. That's a phrase I could not
interest.
bring up. I would wondering if you wouldn't mind going back in time when you first heard about this good divorce journey, where I work side by side with both parents, where we do a lot of planning and decision making, progressive mediation, working on the parenting plan. And then we call in the lawyers to do the part that you're trained to do. So what reflections have you had about that experience and saying yes to a different kind of way of guiding a family?
Well, I'm always worried about the unknown,
Yes.
but I've also had enough experience, particularly in collaborative practice, where there are a lot of aligned professionals, coaches, mental
Financial
health,
people,
finance.
mental health, child specialists. It's a whole team approach in the collaborative process.
Team approach, and I have found it a release, I suppose you would say, this huge additional comfort knowing that there's somebody else who's got the expertise with the emotional side, the parenting side of this. It's not after 33 some odd years. I've been around the block a few times. I know the area, but to be able to drop back and just be able to describe what the law is and stay completely in my lane, frankly, made it so that I was able to be a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more just on point with the client, with what my expertise is. One of the, shall we say, anxieties, I suppose you would say, is always, as an attorney, my hourly rate is higher. It can be expensive to do the hand-holding or the educating or the pieces of it that are, certainly as a mediator, what I do. I've been doing it a long time, but cost becomes an anxiety point for everybody. I want my clients to be satisfied and to be able to say, okay, I'm doing what I need to do, and someone else is handling the things slower than I would do it, more thoroughly than I would do it, simply because of that cost anxiety.
Sure.
Clients' cost anxiety, but mine as well, because I don't want them to be offended by how much it all costs.
So are you telling us that lawyers are not trained in emotional regulation and the uncoupling of couples and therapeutic trauma-informed pathways and all the things that are happening with these divorcing folks?
They're trained in evidence.
Yes. And
That's about it.
Right. And I think this is one of the misconceptions we have about divorce and in the narrative of our country currently is that, oh, we're getting divorced, call a couple lawyers and go to war. And you lived in that world for a long time as a litigating attorney. Would you mind going back? And if you want to tell it a little like a horror story, that's fine with me, of what it means to be a litigating lawyer and what that meant for families and why you chose as a professional to move away from that work and to focus on your mediation progress. So let's start with the horror story.
Looking backwards. Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about it before we got on that I got a whole bunch of horror stories after 30 years, and I've sometimes wondered how did I collect such a list of weird things that happen, clients that were out of control, the other side that was out of control. And just a realization that if it's done anything for me, it's taught me patience. So I think the reason I have such a long list is I'm far more patient than a lot of family law attorneys who are just trying to, number one, control the thing. So that's one issue is you have attorneys who are trying to get control over something that's not very controllable. You can't control
Mm.
the other side. You can't control the judge. You can influence, certainly, but you can't control it. Talk about attorneys amongst themselves, talk about client control. Do you have client control?
Oh, really? Is that a thing? That's part of the
Oh yeah,
jargon?
that's a part. Oh, absolutely. And it's difficult to do litigation with an attorney who doesn't have any client control because
Mm.
when you turn to them and say, well, this is how I see it, here's what it's going to look like in front of the court, we should probably figure out how to not go to court for your client and my client's sake. But if they turn to their client and either because they don't want to make the pitch, you should settle, or they can't make the pitch because they don't have the skills or whatever it may be, that they can't bring the client to a place where we're going to make a reasonable presentation or we're going to settle. And that's, no client control. So, and then you have no control over the judge. Coming out of law school, I thought, well, I've could only learn the law well enough, I can navigate this whole thing. And of course, my concept of what the law is and what the judge's concept of the law is not necessarily the same. So, bottom line is the process in the law dating back to 600 years in Britain has been an adversarial process.
Right.
We assume that the judge is going to make a better decision if I stand there, pound on the table, and yell and scream and advocate zealously for my client. The other attorney stands and pounds on the table and advocates zealously for their client. And in all of this noise and back and forth and pushing and shoving, then the assumption is the judge is going to make a better decision because he's got all more
The
information.
black robe.
Right. And I don't know, maybe for a personal injury case, that might be true, but clearly in family law, that's just throwing gasoline on the fire. And we attorneys are trained to do that from day
Right.
one of law school. That's
Yes.
what we're trained to do. And so when you step into family law and you do it in the same way as if it were a criminal case or a personal injury case, you're now throwing gasoline on the proverbial fire. And it's completely unnecessary. And one of the reasons that I got out is I kept thinking, well, if only I can learn the law enough, or if only I can learn about this judge and his or her proclivities, then I can steer this. And just too often coming away with you might as well have a dart and a dartboard and
Yeah.
put out all the different outcomes and throw a dart and see where it lands.
I
Where and it's out of and the clients have no control.
I
So
recently heard an attorney say, family court, no place for a family. You would agree?
I would agree. And, and we can blame the judges. There's plenty of blame to go around everywhere.
Well,
And the fact is, it has a reputation. So back in the 50s or 60s, you had to be able to allege that the other party did something wrong in order to
right.
get a divorce.
You had to prove fault.
You had
Now,
to prove fault. And it wasn't until the 70s that they started, in California being early in that game, but got to no fault divorce. But most people's parents, when they got a divorce, their parents were in the thick of this fault-based divorce, throwing, sticks and stones at the other side. And that's just how you did it. And so,
yeah. And here
you
we are
know,
in 2025, and there are states who are trying to go back.
no, I hadn't heard that.
I think it's
It's a,
either Iowa or Ohio or Illinois. I don't think it's Illinois. I want to say it's Iowa that they had back in the legislation, like
mhm,
we're going to go back. You have to prove, you now have to turn your co-parent into an
mhm,
enemy, a person you had a love story with, a person you're going to have a forever relationship with
right.
if you have those children together.
Mhm,
It is, and going back to this idea of blame, and certainly I have opinions about obviously how we've done divorce. 15 years ago, this was my fear. Like, I don't want to
mhm,
go through one of those dumpster fire divorces with this man who I care a lot about, and we're going to raise our kids together. I don't want him to be my enemy. But it didn't seem like there was much else on the multiple
mhm.
choice test. There was one choice. And you lawyers, I'm going to let you off the hook because I think you make the point. You are doing precisely what you are trained to do in a system that is built to do exactly what it's doing.
Right. And far too many clients starting from the point of thinking that's just how it is.
Right.
That's what they want you to do. Far
Yeah.
too many clients.
Like, right,
I
get
don't
it
care how.
all. Take them to
I
the
don't care.
cleaners.
Take them to the cleaners, make it ugly, argue every single
Mm.
point. And so,
So
and
you gave
let's
up
be
on that.
honest, at the end of the day, when I was litigating, if I had 4 or 5 trials a year, I was making money.
Yeah.
If I didn't
It
have a
was, you were
trial,
incentivized financially as
well,
a business owner to get those clients in trial, which means we have to escalate enough conflict
right.
that you
Yeah.
cannot come to an agreement. We're not going to say we're going to get you in trial because who is that best for? The attorneys.
And I used to always blame the other attorney. Oh, you're just in it for the money. And as I got wiser, I guess I got to a place where I realized it's just easier. Frankly, once you know how to litigate for the attorney, they make more money and it's easier because to settle a case, I have to turn to my client, argue with my client about
Mm.
how to settle it, then turn around, face the other attorney, argue with the other attorney about how to settle it. And settling a case turns out to be actually, it's pretty hard.
Wow.
It,
Like emotionally hard, like in finessing and having the skills and the
no,
effort. Right.
yeah,
But
yeah,
you made a pivot in
yeah.
your career. And I'm wondering if there was a case or a moment, or if this was a gradual shift out of litigation and really focusing on a mediation process. What happened in your attorney brain that turned you?
Well, I went for many years trying to do both at the same time. Yeah, I think you used the word switch. What was a switch? Where did it go?
You had a
But
pivot.
pivot. But when you're doing both, you're switching back and forth from the zealous, argumentative advocate brain to the let's figure out how to settle this case. Let's figure out where the overlap in your interests are, and having to keep flipping that switch back and forth, which I found challenging. And also went for years thinking there must be something going on here that I'm missing. The imposter syndrome is just so common. I kept thinking I'm missing something. There's something going on. I'm not getting it.
Huh.
And finally, when that the switch
This
flipping was me going, yeah, I'm not missing anything. I'm seeing the playing field exactly clear, and this is toxic. And how many times I send the bill to my client after we go to trial, we got what we kind of thought we should get, but it's really expensive.
like 50,000, 10,000. What would be the average in California? You're going to go litigate and all the pre-work and like what's the range that
Well,
just your client might?
let's assume fairly straightforward case. House in the suburbs, 2.5 kids, whatever,
Sure.
and a retirement plan, pretty straightforward. Long-term marriage going to have some custody and support issue, probably not a lot of custody issues, support issues. Pretty straightforward. The two attorneys are doing the process, but negotiating back and forth. And between the two attorneys, if they're reasonable, if they're focused on settling the case, you end up settling the case and you're in it to $50,000.
Mhm.
You do it reasonably. And then there's the still
That's per
straightforward.
client. Is that
No,
per client?
that's
So
both.
total.
If they've
But
settled it,
still,
but if they
that's
take it all the way and then they're not settling it and they're going to trial for whatever reason, now we're at 100 and 120 for both of them, probably. If there are issues that are different, strange, require more analysis, more evidence put on, now we're in the 150, 250,000 between the two of them. And of course,
absurd.
most people just simply can't do
No,
that, pay
no.
that. So they pay a bunch of money, get way down the road, see how much it's costing them, and then
Right. And again,
you're
who
right.
does that
Yeah.
work out for?
And it works out for the attorney.
It works out
You
for
know,
the attorneys. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So as you move to mediation and now looking through that lens of, all of this for these years, couldn't quite do the switch on both. So you went to mediation only. You don't litigate anymore,
Right.
correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you wish you had known now or then that you know now? And what do you really see as a shift in the process in mediation? And I'm also just thinking about the soul of the lawyers
Mhm.
going through that process and also the family members. And again, these parents who have a forever relationship, like just so much damage done, irreparable damage in most cases,
Yeah.
those high toxicity. So put your mediator hat on and let's really talk to the listeners about why that looks different, what that process is, what you've sort of gained and lost as an attorney in that shift.
Mm. So
I know I
yeah, I
asked
guess
like three questions at once. Sorry.
well, I'm trying to sort through. Usually, the first thing that comes to mind is the best thing, so I'm going to go with that. So, the first thing that comes to mind is we start kind of slow. We start with, oh, there's disclosures that need to be done. And you have a lot of questions about how the law works, about what our options are. So let's just kind of set the table, is how I put it. Let's learn about what the law has to say. You don't have to follow the law, but most people kind of, using it a little bit of as a judge of reasonableness, if you will. And very often, for instance, a house being a good description, a good example. What are we going to do with the house? Are we selling it? Are we, but I want to keep the house. And so because they don't really know what the options are, fear causes people to start being, aggressive or saying things that aren't helpful or pushing and shoving because they're got a lot of fear. I don't know where this is going to go. And maybe I'm going to lose the house that I fought so
Mhm.
hard to acquire. And once you lay the options out in this kind of setting the table process, you can see the anxiety start to drop. Not that they're feeling great about it, but at least there's nothing more fearful than the unknown. So you start to bring in with it before you even start negotiating, trying to reduce the unknowns so that the fear level is now dropping down. And while you're at it, having searching for a clearer conversation about, well, why do you want the house? A clearer conversation about, if you had the house, what would that look like? Oh, what that would look like is I'd have about $100 at the end of the month to spend for food.
Right.
Maybe that's not realistic.
Hmm.
And now so this building of the setting the table, if you will, this kind of helping people to see where they stand allows, shall we say, the universe to tell them what they're going to do instead of, oh, my spouse is telling me I have to sell the house. What an ass.
Hmm.
It's not my spouse telling me that I got to sell the house. It's just the budget. It's the
Yep.
finances. It's the lay of the land is what I got to do here. So we're doing a lot of educating that for a lot of litigation clients, they want to know that, but there's enough with litigation clients who just say, go make him go away,
Yeah.
or her go away,
Or
or
her.
just
Yep.
go fix it, just go get me the best deal and I don't want to be involved. Well, of course they're going to be involved. And lawyers have a habit of, I'm going to tell you what you need to know when you need to know it when I get around to it. Oops, did I not tell you that? Sorry. Whereas with mediation, it's let's set the table first
Yeah.
and really get clear first.
We talk about the importance of curiosity, like at the core of this.
Yes. So part of my role is to be curious about what's going on for you. Why are you digging in? What's going on
What's
with
the
you that
motivation? What's the goal?
uh,
What's the story behind it? I mean, in my journeys with them, like, are they a child of divorce?
yeah.
What,
Mhm.
right? What's the baggage that's showing up on this train? And maybe we need to unpack a little bit of that, because
Mhm.
the battle you're fighting today with your spouse might not actually be in the right place at the right time. That might be an old
Right.
battle, or with
Yeah.
your old fears of what you've seen. Have they had
Mhm.
multiple divorces themselves? What is their relationship? Sometimes in my professional cohort, we say we go slow to go fast.
Exactly. Yes. And I guess thank you for seeing that connection, because I start out slow. Let's
Yeah.
assemble some information. Let's get
Mhm.
clear about the why you're doing this and what your options are. And then when it's time to make decisions, making those decisions is so much faster,
Mhm.
because everybody's coming at it. We're looking for getting both parties to a place of making informed decisions, informed
Yes.
about the law to the extent they need to, informed about their own facts, their budget, their situation. Now, we haven't talked much about children, but notice that there's no dollar number associated with,
The
how
kids.
much is it worth to fight over Friday night versus Saturday
Yeah.
morning?
Yeah.
And
I'm going to just put
Mhm.
a little pause. We're going to put a pin
Okay.
in kids. And when we come back from the break, we're going to dive in to specifically how the kids fit into this story, and how a mediator and attorneys either see or don't see the impact on the children. We're chatting today with Matthew Long, attorney, kind of a unicorn in the world of attorneys, who is coming to share with us today the process that you can find in your own divorce that is less destructive and ending with less despair and less debt. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with California attorney Matthew Long.
Are you thinking about getting divorced? Before you call a lawyer, call the Good Divorce Coach, Karen McNenny, a certified divorce counselor, co-parenting specialist, and mediator. Karen's signature Good Divorce experience will guide you through your divorce journey, from the day you make that difficult decision to the day the decree is signed, all for a predictable fee. The Good Divorce Coach will teach you and your partner how to get divorced and be divorced with less conflict and less debt. Visit thegooddivorcecoach.com to get in touch with Karen.
Now, back to the show with Karen.
Welcome back to the Good Divorce Show. I am Karen McNenny, your Good Divorce Coach. Delighted to be chatting today with colleague Matthew Long, who's an attorney in Southern California. And Matthew and I met because we worked on a case together. I brought you into the Good Divorce experience and said, here's the Kool-Aid, start drinking with me. Fortunately, Matthew had already started drinking the Kool-Aid of a better pathway through divorce, moving from his career as a litigating attorney for over 30 years and bringing mediation into the forefront. So welcome back, Matthew.
Mm.
And I'm really curious about how kids show up in the conversation around divorce. We always say, what's in the best interest of the kids? Well, we got to keep the kids in the center. Keep your kids out of the middle. Kids are resilient, right? We have a lot of this kid talk. And I'm wondering if the lens of a litigating attorney around that part of the story versus in mediation, where maybe you have a greater capacity to bring the kids to the conversation. What would you tell us about how the children show up in these stories?
Well, one thing that occurs to me, we spoke earlier about kind of setting the table in terms of educating yourselves. And so many people come into this process a little bit vague, thinking, oh, he wants to take custody from me. No, he wants a weekend. That's not the same. Oh, I want to have two nights of custody during the week. Oh, what time do you get off work? Oh, somewhere between 6 and 7:30. Um, hmm, how's that gonna work?
When your child goes to bed at 8.
When your child goes to bed at 8. And so very often there's this kind of vague, I want to be honored as an equal parent. And so I have a strategy to be honored as an equal parent by using, full custody or language that's not very precise, that doesn't help. And so part of our process is to help them, well, let's get really clear about what you really want. And
Yeah.
yeah, it might be 50-50 custody. And what does that look like? But at the same time, again, if you're getting home late and the child's getting off of school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, something's going to be different than
Mhm.
what you might imagine. And again, offering up all kinds of different options about how to mix and match and spend time with the children. But it is an area in which that experience of anger or conflict during the marriage just gets exacerbated in the aftermath because, you can sort of, as you say, you can kind of, okay, it doesn't much make a lot of sense to spend $25,000 litigating the $10,000 car. That
Exactly.
doesn't make any sense. But how much money do you spend to have a good custodial arrangement with your kids? And so for some people, that's unlimited. I'll spend whatever I have to
Right.
spend. But oftentimes it's also a control issue. I feel anxious. I feel scared. I feel that he or she isn't good for the child because they don't do it the way that I do it, and so now it's trying to get what I couldn't get during the marriage,
Mhm.
which is a co-parenting relationship that's
Right?
smooth and works.
Yeah.
And all of those dysfunctions follow you straight into the divorce and then are
Mhm.
often exacerbated in the litigation world. We're emphasizing the dysfunction and pointing fingers.
Oh my gosh, that is such a little ding. That is
Hmm.
exactly what happens.
Yeah.
Emphasizing the dysfunction, leveraging on it, not
Hmm.
helping them find a new path. And again, these kids in the middle, and,
Yeah.
and I,
Yeah.
I'm going to deviate a bit because we're talking in the month of June, which is Father's Day season.
Hmm.
And I'm really highlighting the role and the experience that dads have traditionally had. Again, we go back to the 70s, 80s, like here's your Wednesday night and every other weekend, and there was no
Hmm.
other
Yeah.
conversation. I think there was a strong mom bias and a difference there. And I see dads so often like, I'm more than an ATM. I'm more
Mhm.
than a taxi driver to my kids. I want to be their parent. And maybe I just have divorced a lot of, or I've dated a lot of divorced dads in my tenure as a divorcee. And I hear these stories and I find it
Yeah.
so heartbreaking. I have such a heart for dads. So not only as a male attorney, but somebody who's walked along the side of families,
Mhm.
what would you say that you have seen just in the role of fathers and where the challenges are, and how we can more lift them up into the conversation? Because there's a learning curve often for them. But I think you're right. They want to be honored and respected, but both,
Right. Both
and whether
sides.
we're a same gendered relationship or not, we're just talking about, in this case, often what happens in a heterosexual mom, dad, traditional family.
And as much as we want to say, oh, all that sexism in family roles is all behind us, no, it's not.
Nope.
There's a lot of sexism, if you will, during the marriage. Father plays these roles, mother plays those roles. And again, we can point fingers all we want, but the fact of
It
the
just
matter is,
is.
it just is. So I'll tell
And
a
then
little
you,
story on myself.
yes, please do.
I when my wife and I separated, my youngest son, who I think was 3 or 4 at the time, there I never had to deal with the picking up and dropping off and the schlepping around and where is he? And I remember distinctly it was a Friday or a Monday night. I had a document that was due before the end of the day is what I was required to do. I'm faxing this back in the days of faxes. I'm
Yes.
faxing it back and forth to my client. We're working on it and I'm all anxious and my daughter's wanting the car that I'm driving to take to a banquet or something. And she was in high school at the time. And I was really anxious about getting the car to her so she could get to her banquet. So I pick up the phone, I call her and I say, I'm walking out the door here in a few minutes. And, I'll be there in time to get you the car. And she says, okay, great. Where's Bram? He's my 3 or 4 year old.
Your son
Poof. My,
is
he's at the childcare providers.
waiting for
Oops.
you to pick him up.
Waiting for me to pick him up. It wasn't on my radar. It wasn't part of what I had to do. I never did it again, frankly. As you can tell, I
Well,
remember it distinctly. It was
yes.
a big deal in my mind. And it could have been something that my former wife had used to bludgeon me if she wanted to. But the
Hmm.
fact is, we needed to make it work. And, okay,
I,
if it's my day, I'm going and picking up the kid at
yeah,
4:30, 5 o'clock. And that's just what I do.
I adore this story. It's so important because what happens in divorce is our job description changes for both
Absolutely.
parties. Suddenly, there might be one spouse who is the undermoneyed,
Hmm.
underemployed, who I don't never open the mail. I don't pay any of the
Hmm.
bills. I
Hmm.
don't know where our retirement accounts are. What am I supposed to do with this settlement and invest? And I think we as a culture are very quick to support those people.
Hmm.
Like, oh, we need to get them financial literacy training. We're set you up with a financial advisor. Well, sometimes we have the parent, it is often the father, who is underskilled on the domestic front. And
Hmm.
moms just want to say they don't know how to do that. They're not good at that. They're
Right,
not,
right.
there's going to be a learning curve. And the
Hmm.
only way dad's going to learn is through the struggle. And
Right.
the only way mom's going to learn is through the struggle.
And and part of that control issue, what's in the best interest of the child? We all these different factors. Who's going to do the homework? Who's going to schlep the child to sports? All of the different things. And somebody who's been focused on that, usually the mom, not
Mhm.
always, somebody who's been focused on that, somebody who's been trying to up level their game in all of that area, has a very distinct idea about what is best. And since they're the best, they should have, I don't know, more time or, honored. And unfortunately, I have to say, after years of litigating, the court's idea of what a, shall we say, minimum level of skill as a parent is pretty low.
Mm.
So if you think you're going to go to court and you're going to get vast majority of the time because your spouse isn't the same parent as you are, is probably not going to go that far.
Mm-mm.
So if we want to argue about it, it just gets worse. It just gets more, you have no influence. If we want to, co-parent, all right, there's certain things I'm going to have to just let go of.
Yes,
And
the
there are certain
surrender.
things I'm going to dig in, and this is the thing that is really important to me. And I want you to step up and start doing this thing, whatever it may be. And then there's a whole list of other things. Sorry, hate to tell it to people, but you gotta just, it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to
So
be
how
okay.
old is Bram now?
He's 31.
Okay.
And,
And
and
and he
he
survived.
and he survived, and he's not a drug addict, and he's going to school, and he's going to be an MFT,
Well,
marriage and family therapist.
sounds like I might need to
So,
have your children on the show.
okay.
I love adult children of divorce coming on the show and what they remember and what mattered and what's the kind of echo of divorce that's still living in their life and their relationships and where our parents did it well and where they could have done it better. I think parents going through divorce, when they hear the adult voice of a child saying, "Hey, knock it off,"
Yeah,
it can really bring
it
us
can
back
happen.
into the reality now and
Mhm.
those early influences.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful story. When you step into a mediation and a couple that has chosen that, what kind of parameters, or maybe this is the question, what should people be looking for and what should they be cautionary about when they're looking to build a professional team or even that one
Mhm.
point person who's going to work with them? Yeah. What should we keep our eyes out for and what should we avoid?
Well, and maybe this is because it is what I feel is my strong suit, but it shouldn't take 20 minutes to explain the division of assets. If you the person who can explain complicated things in plain language is the person who knows the area better than the one that is filling it with jargon. So if you're having in a conversation with a potential somebody who you're thinking might be a mediator, and they're telling you things okay, I'll have to catch up. I'll have to just trust because I just don't understand what's going on here,
Mhm.
that's probably not the person. So being able to boil down complex issues into straightforward language, somebody who is clear starts by saying clearly what mediation is and what it isn't. And the state laws, I assume it's the same everywhere, but maybe not. In California, certainly, whatever you're doing in mediation is confidential. Can't take it to court. You should hear that. You should know that. You should know. You should know clearly what your disclosure obligations are. Disclosure is a pretty much 50 states have some kind of disclosure requirement. Some not much. California quite a bit. But they should be able to explain that fairly straightforwardly. You also should hear from a mediator what your options are. I find explaining collaborative practice not very many of my clients go down the road of doing collaborative practice. It looks expensive. It's there's a team that you're creating. But being able to compare that with mediation makes mediation a lot clearer and also clarifies that you have options within the mediation arena. Can we
Mhm.
bring in a coach? Can we bring in a financial professional? And just to plug my experience with you, to the extent that you have somebody who's their place is going to be, we're talking about the kids.
Yep.
And then you have a mediator slash attorney who's, okay, here's what the paperwork's going to say. Here's how we're going to divide property. Here's the rules around custody and around support. If they can't lay that out pretty plainly, then when it comes to the real thing that's the difficult issue, they're also not going to be explaining it very clearly when the two of you need to get real clear.
Mhm. I
Uh,
like the mantra that I remind my clients, we're going to do family before finances.
mhm.
We're
Yeah.
going to work on your residential and your schedule, and if someone's moving out, and communicating with the kids, and working on your parenting plan, and getting some co-parent education under your belt, like while they're still in their wise brain,
Mhm.
and get them in that heart-centered place. Like, we are protecting your future, which is the raising of your children. And now we can go over and do this math and this division, which actually is not typically that complicated.
Most of the time. Yeah. Yeah.
That,
So
which is
there's
the great
another
irony.
thing that comes to mind while we're talking. The mediator and the coach, if you're working as a co-parenting coach working with both parents, they need to be neutral.
Yes.
And yet that doesn't mean they don't tell you things you need to hear, which
Right. And
may
you
be
don't always
challenging.
like hearing it. I get
Yeah,
that. Like,
I don't like
why are
hearing
you
it.
taking their side? I'm like, I'm not taking their side. I'm just telling you the facts, or I'm telling you what's going to be in the best interest of your kids. Just because
Right.
you don't like the answer
Yeah,
doesn't mean
yeah,
I'm not neutral.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
being able to clarify it out all in a way that doesn't poke the bear, as it were, but
Yes.
at the same time leaves people going, okay, maybe I need to let that go.
Yeah. Well, and I think
So,
there's a misnomer, and you've talked about this, that, oh, mediation wouldn't work for us. We have lots of conflict. We don't get along well. We can't talk. They're unreasonable. So
right,
tell us why, like, oh, no, that's precisely.
right. If you were getting along and could talk smoothly, you probably wouldn't be getting a divorce.
Right. Or
So,
you just go off and do it on your own without any
you
help.
just go and do it. We call it kitchen table, sit around the kitchen
Yes.
table and take it to a paralegal, write it up. It's the mediator that is there to sort through and assist you. And, we, I don't know, we've kind of gotten into an era of some sort where we don't respect professionals, but this isn't the place to wing it.
Yeah.
And so, you don't get along as and then I had a couple that they were nuts, yelling and arguing, and we were talking about very expensive furniture, and they just wanted to argue about everything. And then I realized they hadn't talked to each other since the husband had filed a restraining order to boot her out of the house. And they'd been fighting for 2 years. And the first time they were actually having a conversation was in my office.
Yes.
And of
Yes.
course it was ugly. And of course it was hard. And I had to take Sage out and, around my office after they left because it was
My
so toxic.
gosh.
But by the third time that we met, it wasn't that they were getting along, but they could sit in the room and have a conversation.
Yeah.
And they
It's
had
magic.
kids. So they were going to be having conversations for the rest of their lives, probably.
And acutely every week for 20
Right.
years,
Yeah.
right? Depending on the age of your children. And 18 is not the end of your
Right.
co-parenting
Absolutely.
relationship. It is
Absolutely.
the beginning of a next chapter
Mhm.
without the guardrails of the law and your court and your parenting plan. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that the fact, we don't get along, you choose a method that encourages us to learn how to get
Yes.
along. Yeah, you've been
In that
trying for
model.
20 years, but
Hmm.
now we're in a different phase of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Matthew, I so appreciated working alongside you with our shared client, and having that partnership, and both of us really being able to be in our own lane. And there's a lot of lanes to the process.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, lawyers are wildly underskilled and inadequate to deal with a lot of the parenting, emotional, relational stuff. And I am underskilled and to deal with the law, of course, and the financial components. So having a team can just be such a gift. And I want people in California to know where they can find you so that they can have this just and you just bring such a calm to the room and the chaos, and you bring such a curiosity, and it is such a gift to the process. So if people want to work with you, how do they find you?
Well, Matthew J. Long, I should put that in my it was his scripture, matthewjlong.com. And I've set it up. Mostly I hate technology, but there are certain places, oh my God, you can go set up an initial Zoom call with me from my website. It won't let you set up a time that I'm not available. And
Yep.
we spend a half an hour, and it's so much easier to say, oh, I'm going to invest a half an hour to have this conversation and learn what it's like to sit in a room, in a Zoom room, as it were,
Hmm.
with my spouse and see what's that feel like? What's that like?
Yeah.
Is It's way better than trying to say, okay, I'm going to decide to do mediation without ever having met anyone or having had the conversation. Am I going to do mediation with Matthew Long? Well, I don't know. I saw this podcast, but what's he really like when he's in the room when we're talking about my case?
Yes.
Well, let's do that. Let's spend a half an hour, which frankly spins into 45 minutes most of the
Sure.
time, but all right.
And that's a complimentary session
Yes.
for
Yes.
people. And I offer the same.
Mhm.
Same thing.
Yeah.
There's a button right on the website and you can get
Hmm.
yourself in the pipeline and we can talk. And just because we're talking about divorce doesn't mean even that we're going to have it. Some people just need
Right.
information. And a conversation is not a commitment,
Yeah.
but it's a great place to bring your curiosity so that you are educated, listeners, as you go through your own journey and make sure you've got a good fit. And if you're going
Mhm.
to talk to Matthew, then go talk to one other person. So then you can really contrast and go like, oh, Matthew's amazing. Now I see it.
Or I'm going to go and have a conversation with a litigation attorney and
Yes,
feel how that's different
that's
because
right.
they're going to tell you what they can get for you.
Yeah. It is your precious private story that has a
Mhm.
long, long tail. So how we begin is often how we end. Make sure you're beginning on the right foot.
They say that the most important decision you're going to make in a divorce is deciding what process to use. And so there's a place to go. I don't know about slow, but go with
Mm,
care. Which
mm,
process am I going to use?
yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so very much, Matthew, for taking a leap of faith with me in the Good Divorce Experience and for sharing your wisdom and your reflections with us here today.
Thank you. It was a delight. All right.
And for those of you listening and taking all of this in and might be feeling overwhelmed, disoriented, I just want to remind you everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.
Thanks for listening. Do you have questions or thoughts about this week's episode? Let us know by following the Good Divorce Coach on Facebook and Instagram at Good Divorce Coach, and leave a comment. And be sure to tune in every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific or listen anytime wherever you get your podcasts.